doctor. So what is it?
I'm the doctor.
So what is it?
I'm the doctor.
Only joking.
I'm the doctor.
So what is it?
I'm the doctor.
So what is it?
I'm the doctor.
Only joking.
I'm the doctor.
So what is it?
Small off-duty Czechoslovakian traffic warden.
So what is it?
I'm the doctor.
Only joking.
I'm the doctor.
So what is it?
I'm the doctor.
All right, dudes, it's time for another episode of It's Time to Rewind. I'm known as Bubbawheat, not to the Bubbawheat, not first name Bubba, last name Wheat, just Bubbawheat. This season is Red Who, where I'm covering British sci-fi like Red Dwarf and Doctor Who, and joining me 3 million years in the future via the TARDIS is my guest Robert Moloney, who played the main character in the Doctor Who spin-off series K9. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Yeah, I'm great. How are you doing?
I am doing really good. I'm excited to get you on here. I know K9 is kind of a more obscure series, but I was looking at time loop episodes, and I saw Ouroboros from the K9 series, and I reached out to some of the cast, and you agreed to talk to me, so I'm really excited.
Well, I'm thrilled as well. Thank you so much for asking me because it ended up Canon ended up being kind of obscure and we just did the one season of it and I had an amazing time filming it. I love doing children's stuff because it's so creative and I loved working with the cast and we shot it down in Australia, so that was fun. And it was a great adventure for me, and I could have continued to play that character for 10 years. I think we suffered a little bit from newer, greener producers, and also I just wonder if the sci-fi genre, in that vein, there's some pretty smart scripts and some pretty complex ideas presented that it just didn't quite click with as many kids as they needed it to continue. Certainly some did, certainly some kids did. I got lots of fan mail and Facebook requests and things like that when the series came out. And they really, really loved it. The ones who loved it really, really loved it. But I don't think it reached a broad enough audience for it to continue. And I just wonder if that's the nature of sci-fi, that it takes an older, more mature brain to sort of want to wrap your head around some of these concepts that we present.
Yeah, and I thought the show was fairly interesting. I did think it was, especially the first half of the series, was a little bit too kiddish for me. Watching it as an adult. I know I have a 3-year-old daughter, and it was a little bit too old for her, but she was kind of interested here and there as I went through the episodes. But I did think that whenever it got towards the end, I think that some of the late episodes actually did have some pretty good ideas, and I thought that there were some pretty interesting episodes whenever you got towards the end, especially like Taffany and the time loop, which I think is funny because that one has time loop in the title, but that one didn't really involve anything that most people would consider a time loop.
Yeah. We did 26 half-hour episodes in 6 months, and there's, it was, gosh, I think it was 2008, 2009. So that's like 15, 16 years ago that we shot those. So my memory is vague. I'd have to go back. I took a lot of videos and a lot of pictures, and I would have to go back and look at them and watch all the episodes. But they all kind of blur together. But I do remember Tiffany and the time loop, and that's the one where Gryffen, she turns Gryffen into a 70-year-old man, I think, isn't it?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and she's like this kind of it's not super well explained, but she's this alien that's kind of born out of time, and she can manipulate time so she can like move fast and kind of freeze time, and she makes Griffin into an old man, and she's stealing Georgie's life force over the course of the episode.
Yes, that's right.
But she's also like, has almost like toddler mentality because she's been trapped in VR jail for who knows how long. And
Yeah.
so she's just learning the concept of friends.
Yes, that's right. That's right. One of the main things I remember is the little girl I think thought did a really great job of playing Tiffany. Tiffany? Taffany.
Taffany.
Taffany, yeah. And but I remember that the hours in the makeup chair, converting into a 70-year-old man. But they also gave me contacts to give Griffin cataracts. And the contacts were made by the guy who made the contact lenses for all the Lord of the Ring movies. So I was kind of like, I was like starstruck when I was in his office and getting these contacts put in because I was like, you worked on Lord of the Rings, how cool. Mm.
Yeah, and I thought, and the show is kind of a monster of the week vibe where, pretty much every episode has a different alien. Were there any other kind of like memorable aliens that you remember working with? I know Griffin didn't actually interact because, too much because his character is, an agoraphobic. So you really only had, I think, two episodes where you left the main mansion set.
Yes, and that kind of like spacesuit that I put on to go outside and to protect me from the elements or whatever that is. And
Yeah, that was another one of the later episodes, which I was kind of hit and miss because they explained it as like a VR suit where it made you feel like you were inside, but they didn't really explore that element, and it just looked like you were wearing a weird hazmat suit.
yeah, yeah. But it was fun to wear, although it was extremely hot. Um,
Yeah, even though the episode we were supposed to be like in the freezing cold.
yeah, and we were shooting in Brisbane, and it was like 35 degrees Celsius. I don't know what that is in Fahrenheit. It's like 90 degrees Fahrenheit, and yeah, I was wearing this thing and just sweating buckets on the inside. And between takes, it would be like helmet off and paper towels to the head and makeup coming to do touch ups, and I'd be okay for about 5 minutes, and then fans, blowing in my face to try to keep me cool. Lots of water.
Yeah, and Al, what did you think of, Professor Gryffen having this agoraphobia as a character trait, and
Well,
how did you think about that throughout the course of the season?
yeah, I thought it was limiting. I thought, okay, this is interesting to a point, but I talked to the writers and the producers, sort of midway through the season, and I said, I I would really like to explore. I think it would be a good character journey to, if we go a second season, for Griffin um, to overcome his agoraphobia. I think it's a great story point. I think kids can learn from that storyline about overcoming fears, and also it would get him out of the house and get him involved in more of the adventures. Now, there's a thing. I know that in Australia, most of the television, like it is here in Canada, is subsidized by the government just because we don't have the populations like they have in Europe or the United States to fund it all commercially. And so for children's television in Australia, there's certain guidelines that you have to follow in order to get the funding. And one is that the children have to solve the problem. The children have to be the main um, drivers of solving the problem. And that's for educational purposes, and I totally get it. So I think that in one way, making Griffin agoraphobic was pleasing to the funders, and it was easier for the writers to go, okay, if Griffin can't go outside and solve the problems, he can only help. the children have to solve the problems, and I think that worked well to a point. But also as an actor, I just didn't want to be stuck in the studio. The main Gryffen Mansion was we filmed in a studio, and it was a set on a studio, and I just didn't want to be filming everything in there. I wanted to get out and have some fun. Maybe that was selfish of me, Robert, the actor, but I also thought it could have worked, and they agreed with me. And if we had gone a second season, we would have explored that.
Yeah, do you remember any any discussions about potential storylines for the second season? Because I know they did kind of the final episode is kind of a fake out where you think that K-9 is dead for good, but then he comes back, and even though he regenerates, the only real difference visually is he has a collar.
Yes, yes. Um, yeah, I can't remember right now. I know that the writers and the especially the special effects people were excited about a bunch of new ideas to take K-9 in that direction of being able to do more things, uh, even more than because obviously in our series he does a lot more than he does in the Doctor Who series, um,
Yeah,
flying and
because yeah, he's got the flying, and I think he had the nose laser or something similar to that, but he uses the nose laser a lot in the show. And I did want to ask because I remember hearing that working with K-9 on the Doctor Who sets often was a pain because the K-9 robot, like remote control car aspect didn't work very well all the time. And I know in this show it seems like it was a combination of remote control and also CGI with a lot of the flying. Do you remember any issues with the dog puppet, or what it was like working on that aspect?
yeah, the so the dog puppet actually wasn't remote control. It was it was on kind of I don't know what you would call it, like a gimbal. It was kind of like K-9 was on an apparatus um, that was controlled by the puppeteer. It was basically a puppet,
Mhm.
an electronic puppet, and the puppeteer Dave was with us, in all of those scenes. So on the one hand, the because it was controlled um, manually, there was a lot less hiccups with the technology. But the flip side of that is we had this big apparatus and this other person on set, and especially in some of the closed quarters, we were like, how are we going to get K-9 in there? How do we, how do we shoot it so that we get this thing? And they would shoot it so that either the apparatus was framed out, or if it was in it, then they would take that out with CGI afterwards. But I remember that always being like, how do we fit this huge apparatus in there that's holding up K-9?
Yeah, I definitely noticed, watching it again, that a lot of times whenever it's clearly physical K-9, that he's usually like about shoulder level, but you can never see the bottom of him. So I did kind of assume that he wasn't necessarily remote controlled in those instances. I kind of assumed that there was a puppeteer right outside of frame.
Yeah. And one of the unfortunate things that happened with the show as well is that, that was right around the big economic collapse of 2008. And they ended up losing like 15% of their funding, and having to do the show for less money. And, 15% is a lot. Doesn't
Mhm.
seem like a lot, but it's quite a lot. So I think that limited their budget with CG and different things, and going out on location. So lots of the episodes happened within the mansion there.
And then were there any other like specific episodes that you remember being particularly fun to shoot, or it being a memorable episode for you?
For me, I think that one of the most memorable ones was the one where I did don the suit and get out, because it was like it was so refreshing for me to go on location, because the young actors, Keegan and Pippa, and they were out there on location shoots, and I was like, oh, I got the day off today. you know, Here I am alone in Brisbane. I don't know anybody, so what am I going to do today? Um, and Yeah, that one was particularly fun. Um, the beginning one, the first one was particularly fun, regeneration, and it was a two-part episode, and Canine coming to life. I know that the creators of the character of Canine, Paul Tams, and um, can't remember the other gentleman's name, but they were really excited. They were really excited to get it off the ground, and they were excited about how the character of Canine looked, and they're excited that this idea that they'd had for a long time was getting off the ground. So that was a lot of fun. Like I said, a lot of them just kind of blur together now, after 15 years. Yeah.
Yeah, and then John Leeson, I think the voice of K9 was he there on the set with you, or did he
No,
do it?
he came. Yeah, he came. I remember we were probably about three-quarters of the way shooting, and they had secured him to do the voice, and they added that in afterwards,
Mhm.
obviously. But they were really, really thrilled because he did obviously the original canine voice, and they were thrilled that they got him.
So on set, was there just someone doing like feeding his lines,
Yeah, the operator was. Yeah,
the
Dave, the
puppeteer?
operator, the puppeteer, and he was really good. He memorized most of the lines, and he really gave us a character to work with. It wasn't just like we were watching, this puppet, and he was just reading the lines dryly. He gave us a character to work with and engaged with us in a really great way.
Yeah, and then this is a time loop episode. I did want to talk just a little bit about the Ouroboros episode, which
Yeah.
was kind of, I mean, it wasn't like a straight up time loop, but it does have kind of time loop elements where Starkey is I guess he's has this alien immunity that's they brought in from his parents, which is another storyline that's I think just existed in this episode and then was kind of dropped. I don't remember them coming back to Starkey's parents after this episode. Uh, do
No.
you do you remember anything about the big snake episode? And I know from your perspective or from your character's perspective, this was whenever Gryffen thinks that Starkey was messing with the ST,
The
um,
space-time manipulator.
yeah,
Yeah.
STM.
Yeah.
But that's because everybody else is losing time because they're going back in time, and then Starkey is the one character that's kind of immune to it. And then their explanation is that his parents, were experimenting with alien immunity.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing that I remember most about it is when I first read the episode, I went, "Oh, cool! We're doing we're doing like a time loop episode. We're doing a time travel, not really a time travel episode, but a time loop episode." And I thought, what is it about? What is it about us and in storytelling and sci-fi, especially, that we are fascinated with this idea of time travel, right? Like, what is it that we see it in all kinds of um, movies and television shows, most notably sci-fi stuff. And I think it's because, like, at the root of it, I think it's because we're human and humans make mistakes. And mistakes usually happen like, once the present moment is done, they happen in the past. They're in the past. And if we could go back in time and fix our mistakes, who would we be? Who would we be married to? Who would we be friends with? Who would we um, hang out with? Where would we be living? Like all of these things could change for us. And in a sense, we time travel in our minds all of the time. We go back in our memories and think about things that have happened in the past, and we look forward and visualize what the future is going to be, whether it be filled with anxiety, or we're afraid of something, we're afraid something's going to happen, or maybe we're excited about something that's going to happen, we're looking forward to something. I think we're time traveling all the time in our minds, and um, it's it's just a fascination with sort of bringing. I think the reason we do time travel and time manipulation storytelling, especially in sci-fi, is because of that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting way to look at it. I don't think I've really thought about it in those terms before.
Yeah, I just think that like got me thinking. I remember looking at, and I remember doing the research on the Ouroboros, and there's and the the first discovery of an Ouroboros was like around in King Tutankhamun's tomb, right? There was a Ouroboros around his head, and apparently this um, represented eternity, and it represents fertility, and it represents a number of different things in a number of different cultures all throughout the world. So this idea of the snake, this Ouroboros snake eating its own tail, this cyclical nature of life. We come back around to things all of the time. People have deja vu. So it's this symbol that's been enduring through millennia.
Yeah. And I again, the fact that this is a time loop podcast, I am curious, like, do you, maybe besides Groundhog Day, do you can you think of any like time loop movies or TV episodes that you enjoy?
Well, this is like going way back, and I think they did a remake, but I did enjoy watching Quantum Leap when it was the very first TV series that was
Mhm.
done. It was fairly exciting. You would probably want to talk to my brother because he's a huge sci-fi fan, and a little bit older than I am. He still watches, he's watched every episode of Star Trek and every single movie, and um, yeah. But other than that, I mean, I'm always, I am interested, and it's always, yeah, it's interested. I'm interested in how the ripple effect that
Mhm.
is always explored um, in these time traveling stories of you change something in the past, and how does the ripple effect create change? How does it change the future?
Yeah, I think Quantum Leap especially was really great at exploring that concept. I definitely, I haven't revisited it, but I watched that show whenever it first aired as well. I watched that start to finish, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's the one that sticks out in my mind.
Yeah, and then I would like to give you the opportunity to let people know, if there's anything that you're working on now or anything that's come out recently that you want to talk about or promote and let people know about.
Oh, cool. Well, yeah, there's a TV show called Alert Missing Persons, uh, and the second season is just about to be released if it hasn't already. And I do a guest star on one of the episodes. I play a very different character from Gryffen. Um, yeah, I had a Christmas movie come out, a Hallmark Christmas movie come out at Christmas called Christmas on Cherry Lane 2. And currently my wife and I actually started an acting studio where we live because I was just looking for an opportunity to give back because I've had such a good time being an actor, and I had a pretty good career, and I was looking forward an opportunity just to give back. And I thought, well, a friend of mine said, what about teaching? And I said, no, I think I'll be a horrible teacher. I'm too impatient. I think you'll be great. You should just try it. And I did, and I fell in love with it. And so I'm doing that. And I'm also the artistic director of a theater company. So I'm busy, doing a lot of stuff on stage as well. But yeah, it's been a bit of a slow start to 2025, mostly because there was a bit of a downturn in the industry with respect to the contraction with Wall Street devaluing the streaming services,
Mhm.
and then the fires in LA have slowed things down. But things are picking up. Things are picking up now, and so hopefully I'll have some news for you soon. But I'm also like you, and congratulations on your daughter. I have a 5-year-old daughter, so the bulk of my life right now. In fact, I just came home from dropping her off at summer day camp before I jumped online with you. And then I'll go pick her up and take her to swimming lessons. And that's the greatest joy. Yeah, just, as you know, kids are awesome.
Yeah, I know, in any longtime listeners of my podcast, I'm sure have heard, my daughter make appearances, uh, you know, very occasionally, when she ends up being noisy in the other room, and my microphone picks that up. So I'm sure that she's been heard off and on throughout the course of this podcast. But yeah, she's definitely a joy.
Yeah, great, great. Yeah, my daughter has jumped online with me a number of times and various meetings, especially during COVID.
Mm.
If I had a call back and it was on Zoom, I'd be almost done, and I'd say, "Hey, Lily, come here, and say hi to these people," and that was fun. Yeah.
And then is there anything else that you wanted to talk about K9, or any other stories or memories from working on that show before I let you go?
Well, I just, it was really an honor to work on something that was connected to Doctor Who, because I know that that's just such a groundbreaking television series, and then of course the reboots of it I thought were fantastic. I saw, which one did I watch? I think I watched mainly the one with Benedict Cumberbatch because he played Doctor Who, didn't he? Was it Benedict Cumberbatch?
No, he played Sherlock Holmes. Let's see,
That's what
there's
I'm thinking of.
Christopher Eccleston, Matt Smith.
Oh yes, okay. It was the one. It was the first one I think with Christopher Eccleston, and I just thought it was amazing. Um, it had really evolved because when I
Mhm.
first got this job, I thought, oh my God, I've heard of Doctor Who, but I haven't really watched it. So I ended up buying a box set of DVDs before I flew down to Australia, and just trying to get an idea of what the world was, what the Bible was, what the you know parameters of that world were. And I thought, wow, this is really quite I mean, some of it was dated and whatever else, um, but the ideas that they were presenting, I thought were really, really interesting and quite ahead of their time. So it was an honor to be a part of that, and it was.
Yeah, even though technically K9 was, the only connection to to Doctor Who was K9 himself,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
they
yeah.
had to change him in the first episode again because they couldn't make him look like the Doctor Who K9, at least not exactly, since I
Well,
guess.
that was a fascinating thing because I think Paul Tams created the character of K9, and he
Mhm.
owned the rights to the character, but the BBC owned the rights to how the character looked, to the
Yeah.
image. So, and I think it was just too expensive, or BBC didn't want to give our production the rights to the image. So I think they gave it to us for like that first episode where he has the transformation, and then from then on in, he looked different. So that was the first time that I'd heard of one person owning the rights to the character, and somebody else having the rights to the image of that same character. That the two things are separate.
Mhm.
There's the image and the character. Yeah, yeah, that was kind of interesting.
Yeah, and then I just remembered I did also was curious about the entire setting of the world of K9, because it reminds me a little bit of the X-Men, where it's set in the near future, but because it's not super futuristic, but there is definitely a lot of future techs, and of course they have like the robotic police officers. What do you remember about like being told about what the setting of K9 was?
Well, here's here's a funny story. So like I said, there were beautiful people, the producers and stuff, but they were fairly green. And so my first memory of arriving in Australia, arriving in Brisbane, and get off the plane, and I've been traveling for I don't know, 20 hours or something like that. And I get off the plane, and I'm looking for somebody to pick me up, and there's nobody there at the airport. There's nobody with my a card and my name on it, and so I don't know how to make a phone call in Australia. I mean, I know how to make a phone call, but like, do I dial the zero and the one, or do I just dial the
Mhm.
one, or so I had to ask for help. So I had this number, I had this phone number, and it was Greg Waters, and he was the story producer, and we ended up becoming very, very good friends. And for some reason, I just had this number and called him, and he was like, "Oh my God, oh my God." And turned out my driver was just late. He'd got stuck in traffic and he was late. And so he picked me up, and then they took me to the production office, and I met Greg, and he said, let's grab a coffee." And he said, "So what do you like? Ask me anything," because he was the head story writer. And I said, "Well, I don't know much. Like, I asked for a Bible, a story Bible, about 3 times, and I haven't gotten one, because when they create a series, what you want to do is you
Mhm.
want to create a Bible, which is like, this is it gives the writers and the actors the world. This is the world we live in. This is what's happening. This is what the characters are. This is how they're related. This is the kind of technology. This is the time frame it works in. This is who these people are." And he was like, "They didn't send you a Bible? Oh my God." So we sat in a coffee shop, and he started to explain it to me. And I started nodding off, because I'd been traveling for a very long time, and it was very heady. And he was like, "Listen, we'll have time to catch up." So I sort of caught up on it the first few days I was there for rehearsals and costume fittings and things like that, and started piecing it together. But I do remember it was kind of interesting that it was there was a bit of a totalitarian Orwellian feel to what was going on with the police, and I liked the fact that we were rebels. We were all
Mhm.
kind of rebels under the radar, and we were getting away with things, and that we shouldn't have been getting away with. I like that aspect of it.
Yeah, I thought that was definitely an interesting part. Even though, as a viewer, and I imagine partly because it was a kids show, I didn't think it was, fleshed out enough. I thought it could have been fleshed out a lot more, but I could see that the bones were there. And I do think that it had an interesting concept, and I am curious to see where it would have potentially gone if it had kept going, because I do think that there were some interesting bits. And even though it took me a while to get into it, because I whenever I started watching it, I was like, this show is just so weird, so bizarre. I have
I
no
know.
idea what's going on.
Yeah.
But honestly, by the time I got to the end, I thought that it finished strong, and I did enjoy the characters, and I did start to enjoy the show as the more time I spent with it.
Well, I'm really thrilled that you stuck with it, and that you dedicated yourself to say, "Hey, I'm gonna stick with this. There's enough value in it. I can see flaws, but there's enough value in it that I'm gonna stick with these characters, and allow them to grow with me." And that's touching. I think one of the main things was I think that all of the actors, I think we had good chemistry on set, and I think we really enjoyed each other, and we hung out with each other all the time. I was the older, the older, more experienced dude, and yeah, we hung out all the time. We had dinners, and went out every weekend. We went down to the beach and hung out, and I took surfing lessons. And I think that came across on screen is our chemistry, and our enjoyment of each other.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. But thank you so much for talking with me. It's really been a pleasure, and it's been an interesting experience. Discovering this kind of bizarre little show on. It's currently streaming on Tubi in the U.S. right now, and
Right.
just
Great.
uh, yeah, and just kind of discovering it, and really glad that to be able to talk to somebody involved with the show and who has fond memories of it.
Yeah, I really do. And like I said at the beginning, I'm really, really thrilled that you reached out because it was a great memory for me. And I know the show wasn't perfect, but it was really fun to put together, really fun to work on, and something that I'm quite proud of my work in, and of all of the people who worked really hard to put it together. It's weird when you work so hard on something for 6 months longer because they flew me back to do ADR, which is additional dialogue
Mm.
recording, fix things afterwards, and then for it to not like launch like we wanted it to can be disappointing. So this is, you've allowed me to be a time traveler and go back in time and unearth some of these memories. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. And I thank everybody for listening. And if you want to find the show, it's Time to Rewind. It's available on all the podcatchers out there. And if you want to find me, I'm on social media everywhere where I'm at Bubbawheat. I'm most active on Threads, and we also have a Facebook group. It's Time to Rewind, a time loop group, and you can join that to discuss episodes as they come out and have discussions about other time loops and movies and TV shows. And until next time, smoke me a kipper and I'll regenerate before breakfast next week.